Everyone, this is David Bronner, editor of Working RE Magazine and senior broker of OREP E&O Insurance. We're going to turn Richard loose here in just a second. Thank you all very much for attending. I have just some brief housekeeping issues that are very important that I'd like you to know about. First is you were sent the link for a handout that Richard sent. If you did not get that link, please email Isaac at orep.org. We will resend the link for the handout. Isaac at orep.org. This webinar is slated to be about 90 minutes. So if you need to leave early, please do not worry. This webinar will be recorded, and I don't know, Isaac, if you haven't started recording, please do so now. This webinar will be recorded, and you will automatically get a link probably within 48 hours so you can look at it at your leisure. Let's see, there's going to be a survey during this. We'll let you all know all about that. There's a dialog box in the bottom right. If you have any questions, you have the ability to ask them. We will monitor. If it really needs to be asked right at that moment, I will try to break in. If not, we'll try to get to them at the end. And last but not least, most of you, the overwhelming majority of you, have signed up for both parts of this webinar. Some of you only signed up for today. Remember, the second part is next Tuesday, same time. If you care to join that one, even if you can't make it, again, it'll be recorded, so please let us know, and we can sign you up for that. So again, you can ask questions. You will be sent a link for the free recorded version if you need to leave early. And there's a handout out there. If you did not get the link for that, please ask Isaac. Other than that, I think we are good to go. Richard, please take it away.
Well, good morning, everybody. You can see about me, but I'm an appraiser. I also work giving education not only to appraisers. I'm trying to help all of us become better at our jobs so we can get more money. And I'm also trying to educate those banks and AMC so they quit picking on us. You know, it works both ways for everybody in something like this. We flipped up some questions for you to think about. There's a poll on this one. Some of these questions came to me when I started off with appraising. You know, I was given a sheet to determine. You know, the guy who was training me said, here's what your bedroom adjustments are, and some of those things. So I'd like you to think about that. We're going to do a little poll on this. We'll have some other questions that Isaac will deliver to you. Now, my method here, this class that we're going to do, I have a 4-hour and a 7-hour version of this. I am trying to strip it on down to 90 minutes to give it fast. So my delivery method is I'm trying to give it to you fast and furious. I will not be able to cover everything. I'm sure there's going to be 100 questions afterwards, without a doubt, and I understand what's going to be going on with that. But it's a scenario of we think this is important, and so we're trying to get it out there. I'm trying to help you by providing advance warning on how governments, banks, they're coming after appraisers, and that's what we're talking about, adjustments today. In trial, I will absolutely tell you, I've been expert witness at several court cases trying to defend the appraiser. They did not have adjustments in their work file, and because they did not have adjustments in their work file, it was almost impossible for me to help defend that appraiser. And in several of these, they ended up getting their licenses revoked or suspended for a short period of time. So I'm taking that information and I'm trying to help you think about better ways. And if you want longer versions of this class, I do it live in several states, Washington, Oregon, Arizona most often. Contact us, more than willing to do something like that. Let's start off by saying real estate agents, they have an advantage over us as appraisers. Why? Because they meet buyers and sellers every week. They get to listen to how buyers and sellers are thinking about decisions, what's going through. In residential is a very emotional purchase. You know, oh, honey, I love the kitchen, and the colors are just right. In the commercial realm, it's more of a dollar and cents, how many square feet, what's my income from it, is it got the right street frontage. But residentially, it is very emotional, and because of that, real estate agents do have an advantage over appraisers because they get to monitor that. I have been a real estate agent for years, sold multi-million dollars worth of in numerous years, and so I got to come into this appraisal business with some of that emotional thought process. So just by dealing with them, I could figure out what the adjustments were. Later I found out that was not really the best way to do it. Here's the problem that we have as appraisers too. By law, we are not allowed to make adjustments based upon emotions. Even though the buyers and sellers are doing it, we are not allowed to make the adjustments based upon that. Appraisers must support their value and their adjustments. And adjustments must be with the majority of the people, not on one person or an individual. It must be what is the market. Whoever is buying that segment, that area, that price range, so it is a segment, and we must have proof of that. Now, the moment I do this class live, and we have a lot of interaction when we do this live, I start to get this, but Richard, I've been in this business 30 years. You know, imagine this fat guy leaning back, scratching his belly. I've been in here 30 years. I know exactly what the adjustment is. I'm an appraiser. They're based upon my opinion. Well, actually, you can't. They're based upon my knowledge. That's really cute. In my area, oh, I hear this one. In my area, things are different. There's just not enough sales to prove an adjustment. I hear that whether it's in Montana and in Phoenix, kind of a big place, Sedona, Moses Lake, Seattle. I hear it all over the place, and everybody keeps saying it's different in my area. And gee, there's not enough proof. There is if you know how to look for it. Now let's start off with doing rational evidence. Ration, the reason or reflection alone to determine something. Appraisers often use rational evidence, their feelings, or, quote, my experience. This is not the way us as appraisers are allowed to do this. This is wrong. So to rationalize it is the wrong way, but I'll tell you it's very common for appraisers to do that. Again, not so much the commercial side. Then there's this thing called empirical evidence. Think of Caesar, if you will. Empirical evidence, a source of knowledge acquired by observation, experimentation. Evidence, information based upon evidence. The empirical refers to gathering of data and using only evidence that is observable, that you can prove. So one way to think of it is empirical. It's superior, the best, top of the food chain sort of thing. It also is testing of a theory or testing of your adjustments. Is that a $60 a square foot or $500 a square foot adjustment? You test it, and there are ways, and that's what you're here for today, and we're going to be going on. So there's rational evidence that way too emotional, and there's empirical. And what I'll tell you is this is very important for appraisers to understand this, because a failure to understand the difference between rational and empirical is why a lot of appraisers lose their certificates, pay fines, get thrown out of the business, or lose lawsuits. And it's also one of the big problems that we have between us trying to interact with real estate agents, and they're telling us, oh, the adjustment is, and that's, you know, really cute for them. The problem is they feel what the adjustment is. We have to prove what that adjustment is. Now, what I'm bringing up on screen right now is this is an instructor down in Arizona. What a dweeb. And he hands this sheet out to all of his not only his students, but the people working for him. And he goes, here's what your adjustments are going to be in your appraisal. This is what you're going to do. He also hands it out and tells real estate agents this is it. Now, look at the top. The following features and adjustments have been accepted by underwriters. So in other words, that's what he's relying upon as proof that he can use the adjustment, because the bank accepted it, because the bank didn't question it. So he's looking for the easiest way to slide down the hill. He's looking for whatever doesn't get criticized. But that doesn't mean that these adjustments are right. Down at the bottom somewhere, oh, ceiling fans, $250. Really? Okay, I'm doing a $10 million house this week, $10 million. I'll trust you, they got ashtrays costing more than $250. So to sit here and tell me a ceiling fan's worth $250 is wrong. But this is also the way a lot of us appraisers started out. I received something like this mainly because I must not have known what I was doing, so the guy just said, here, use these. And I ended up using them for years. Look at a pool, $10,000. I'm in Seattle, Washington. A swimming pool's a dreg. I mean, it'll reduce your property values by 5,000. So the fact that he has this on a sheet, this is what he uses on his appraisals, on his employees' appraisals, and this is what he also teaches. And it's just the wrong way, folks. But that's what this class is kind of about. So let me kind of impress you. This appraiser's license was revoked. Findings: failure to provide proof of analysis supporting the data in the work file, made adjustments that contradicted the information in her work file, failed to make accurate or consistent adjustments, used inappropriate comparables, and had her license revoked, is what you will. Now this one, failed to disclose the methods used at arriving at the adjustments. In other words, she used that rational method, it feels like, I was told, had no way to explain how those methods worked. Failed to make adjustments that were supposed to be there. Failed to list history. A number of things, if you will. How about this guy? Failed to support adjustments for an ADU, attached dwelling unit, mother-in-law, if you will. Failed to make adjustments for road noise. Incorrect calculations. But right off the top, failed to support the adjustments, and as a result had his license revoked for a period of time. This one I just found the other day, and it was from our state of Washington. Their licensing and the respondent failed to support a $6,700 condition adjustment, failed to support a $2,500 quality adjustment, $7,800 for condition, whatever, failed to support. What I'm trying to tell you is if you do not have support, proof of what an adjustment is, it can get you into big trouble and you lose your license. When we do some of the court work is where we came up with some of the information how this will do it. But in one of the courts, it was Supreme Court, by the way, the appraiser's opinion is not persuasive, to this court. The appraiser's opinion, in other words, it's not cutting it. A view of judgment, a definition of an opinion. A judgment, not necessarily based on fact. A belief, a judgment that rests on grounds insufficient to produce certainty. An opinion based upon something less than absolute, could be based upon emotion or somebody's interpretation of the facts. Opinions may be the result of your perspective, your way of looking at it, how you were raised. I don't like that part of downtown. I don't like that part. There were always bad people that lived in that part of town. Or it was always known to be a pollution or something like that. It's your feelings, and that is not reliable in the courts, and everyone else are not allowed to do it. We conclude that the appraisal report is not admissible because the appraiser did not apply a reliable principles and methods. In other words, after going through this, the client paid for the appraiser, the appraisal, it was a divorce case, no big deal, on some of these things, they came out and they said, you know, this guy's report sucks and we're not going to accept it. And that is how you need to look at your appraisals. Is this something that a court or any review appraiser working for a state would look at your report and see, was it credible? Did you have evidence of what your adjustments were going to be? Now appraisers, let's bring it down to our USPAP, Standards 1.1. We must be aware and understand and correctly employ recognized methods. And a feeling isn't it, by the way. Standard Rule 1-4, when sales comparison approach is applied, the appraiser must, it's an important word there, must analyze data to indicate a value conclusion. You must analyze data, and feelings is not an indicate. You cannot have a feeling about this. You must have proof of what's going on. So let's jump to another standards rule, 1B, not commit an error of omission that impacts the appraisal. In other words, if you don't have any support for your adjustments, if you don't have any proof of what that adjustment would be, then that is an error of omission. You don't have what's required. And an appraiser must avoid making unsupported assumptions, again, like an adjustment. And the failure to include something, like proof or support of an adjustment, whether it's in the appraisal or within your work file, if you don't have it, you got yourself some issues here. So let's jump over to the scope of work rule. An appraiser must, notice those little words, must gather and analyze information about those assignment elements, and an adjustment is an element of an appraisal. So if you were wondering what that meant, here we go. Credible assignment results require support by evidence and logic. So that's not some court ruling on this. This is within USPAP and effectively state and federal law. And it flat out says you must have evidence and logic that brings you to your conclusion. So let's kind of break this down a little bit. Support the truth of corroboration. Verify, prove, validate, substantiate, confirm, attest, authenticate, whatever. I hereby swear. So when you're reading through USPAP or even in the Fannie Mae, you go look at the limiting conditions that's in there. It flat out says what you have to have. You must have support of your adjustments, of your conclusions, of how you reached it. This is what they're talking about. You could look at evidence, the strongest type, which provides proof of an assertion. Proof, evidence sufficient to establish a thing as true. Or testing. In other words, you can't test your feelings. You can't test your experience. I cannot look at your appraisal report and figure out what it is that you are feeling or how it is you adjusted that. But if I look at your work file, I need to see how did you come to your conclusions? How did you come to those adjustments that are there? What brought you to it? So what I'll tell you is, by going through those other slides and kind of bouncing that through fairly quick, adjustments must be based upon facts, not your opinion. Now, even more, here's one way to look at it. If a review appraiser were to look at your appraisal, and maybe even your work file, could they look at that and replicate and come to your same conclusions? That is a very important way to think about that. They must be able to look at it, follow your logic within your appraisal report, not just, hey, here it is, and it's in a flood zone, and it's really nice, 1,200 square feet, therefore it's worth $500,000. Huh? That's a leap of faith. A reviewers, whether it's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the bank, who cares, or me, if we get your work and we're going to be reviewing for some court case, I hope not, I have to figure out how you came to your conclusion, and if I don't understand it, that's what I'm going to say. I don't understand it. And by the way, that's not a very good thing. Also, we cannot use somebody else's appraisal report. I get that all the time. Well, here's an old report from 10 years ago, and here's their value. Use it. I can't use somebody else's appraisal report from last week, last month, last year. Who cares? I don't know where their evidence is, their support. I cannot refer to it in my appraisal file by saying, well, I made an adjustment based upon Bob's appraisal. That's not how that works. Data is best or it's closed, and what I'll also tell you, here's kind of the shocking thing. If you don't have any data, if you don't have any evidence, then don't make the adjustment. It is as simple as that. No support, no data, no adjustment. Once we got that through our head here at American Home Appraisals, our appraisal reports have fewer adjustments within them. We may end up with a little wider adjusted range, but at the end of everything, we only put in the adjustments that we can prove. We leave the rest out. Our final adjusted range is a little wider, but we get to call what the value is within there and why. You know, it's at the upper end because values are smoking hot, or it's at the bottom because it's 2009, something. So understand this, and that right there is very difficult for appraisers to get into their head. Appraisers, we're not gods, despite everybody else's opinion. Appraisers do not establish value. Appraisers provide written support of value. And if we're really, really lucky, that value conclusion that we come to is also the sales price. Only if we're lucky, but it doesn't always happen. To go with Fannie Mae, the appraiser is to provide a lending institution with an accurate description of the property and an adequately supported estimate of market value. Understand those terms now. Support, I've already explained and given you that definition. So let us look at Fannie Mae again. Fannie Mae expects all appraisers to observe the following. Lenders must ensure that unsupported assumptions or personal opinions are not used in the appraisal. I'm telling you, you cannot use your personal opinions for most of this for the adjustments. Fannie Mae is telling lenders they'd better start looking at this and making sure personal perceptions are not used. So let's give you something that just happened within the last couple of weeks. Based upon an examination of the UAD data, Fannie Mae's focus for the next 12 months will be on adjustments. Data indicates that many appraisers are not using proper methodologies to make their adjustments, which is why we're here today. Some appraisers are still using the old standard $20 per square foot for an adjustments, and the house is brand new and costs $500 or $600 a foot. In other words, they're seeing the problem. Appraisers are failing, and this will get you gray, if not blacklisted, by Fannie Mae if you do not have support and make the right adjustments. Fannie Mae is planning to reevaluate the appraisers. They're going to evaluate you based upon the new system that's coming in. We did a class a couple months ago about rejected appraisals and Fannie Mae's new UAD system, UAD, YUMDUP, and AQM. You should probably take it. It's pre-recorded up on the website. They are seeing lots of under-adjustments, and they are going to start coming after you for this. In other words, pay attention. What I can also tell you is no single adjustment method works everywhere, every time. There's literally dozens, 24 different methodologies for determining adjustments. I will work sometimes 1 or 2 different ones in every area. It doesn't mean, so when you're out on the blogs and somebody's attacking, oh, that single line regression sucks and it doesn't work. Okay. In his neighborhood, in that area, for that price range, it could be that it does not work. But in other areas, it can. So part of what I'm trying to show you today is to get you to understand some of the methodologies that are there. And again, if you want more, we do the live 4- and 6-, 7-hour class on that. We really work through it to help everybody. And your appraisals can become bulletproof because you have this. You can defend, and I can defend you. And
hey, Richard?
Really easy. Yes, sir.
I just like to interrupt briefly because a lot of people joined us late. And I want to just take a breath. I want to just take a breath and tell everybody who came in late that there is a link to a handout. If you did not receive that, please email Isaac, which is isaac@orep.org, isaac@orep.org. We sent out a locked link, unfortunately, for a while, but that's all been rectified. So you should all be able to download that. I also want everyone to know who came in late that this will be an hour and a half, and it will be recorded. It is being recorded. So if you need to leave early, you will get an automatic email to the link within 48 hours so you can re-listen to this or listen to it in its entirety at your leisure. The last thing is a bunch of people are saying, when's he going to get to how to do it? And Richard, I'm sure you are going to get to that shortly. But I just want to let everybody know to just let's take a breath and let's relax. There's a lot of stuff to do here. And Richard, I don't know if you still want to do that survey or not. It almost seems moot now, but if you want to ask some of those questions, just cue Isaac when you're ready and we'll do that.
Okay, now let's get through here.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Adjustments, they got to be justifiable, logical, sensible, and most importantly, defendable. And again, that's how it comes out. Now, we've got 3 approaches to value: cost, sales, and income approach. Actually, each and every one of those has adjustments. So let's touch upon the cost approach. And people are going, really? There's an adjustment there. Absolutely. Depreciation. It is one of the major adjustments that is in there. Again, let's just kind of go through cost approach, determine land value, cost of constructing, subtract for wear and tear, and you equal us. And the depreciation can be functional, physical, economic. There's all sorts of things that are impacting there. We won't have time to go over it. You've got a little slide on the math. Effectively, depreciation is that, one adjustment we have to come up with. So I'm going to focus only on physical wear and tear today because of our time limits. I'm not going to touch upon the other things. So let's go down to the physical wear and tear. So here's something to consider, because many of us, who's ever heard, my house has gone up in value? But the question is, what's really gone up in value? Has the house, or is it the dirt? Let me show you an Excel or a sheet in a second. Now, if land values were stable, if all they did was stay the same, they never changed, then determining the wear and tear or the depreciation would be fairly simple. And we could say that the real estate has gone down in value. And I'm kind of combining. So on this little graph here, if land was constant, never changing. You have the brand new house and it sells for $1 million, and after a while the total value of the real estate, including improvements, would go back down to the value of the land. In other words, it would be a very simple declining depreciation schedule, easy for anybody to figure out. It's like a car. Wears out and you get rid of it and eventually goes to the junkyard and you got your vacant lot left. The problem is that in most areas, not all, land values are increasing. So this is what it really looks like is early on land is a small portion, a house is a big portion, and the house gets smaller and smaller, but land gets more and more. In other words, things wear out. You do get depreciation of the assets. So the three methods for determining physical depreciation is your best guess. I don't like that one. Market data, I like that one, Marshall and Swift, or some other tables. So those are three quick ways of determining physical depreciation. So let's do with that effective age. It's an estimate of age based upon your guess. Based upon your experience and comparisons, I will tell you it's a poor choice. It's usually the way that we are taught first. I'll just determine the effective age and divide it by, and boom, boom. The issue here, it's non-defendable. It has no evidence, no support, and it's very unlikely to be duplicated by somebody else. So it works, but it's just not whiz-bang. Effective age of the building is reduced when there are improvements or maintenance to this, you know, our C rating, C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we can move it. So what you can see is if there is no maintenance, you will have a higher effective age. If you have a lot of maintenance, you'll have a lower effective age. But we end up kind of goofing. So to look at it on a scale, here's where we're looking at, we've all been told that, well, a house will last for 65 years, and after 65 years, it's worthless. All right, for an average construction house, maybe, but it's different for expensive. What happens is whenever there is some maintenance, a new roof, paint, carpet, new windows or something like that, it effectively raises the value of the house because you've improved it. And if you were to graph it out, you could take a 20-year-old house, do a lot of improvements, and you could make it to be effectively similar to a 5-year-old house. So instead of the house lasting for 65 years, maybe it gets to last 100, 110. Physically is what I'm talking about. So improvements to a building reduces its effective age. However, taking that effective age and actual age, both can be placed onto your sheet, onto your appraisal. Let's calculate this out and show you how this could work. Average construction is expected to last 65 years. Assume that a property has an effective age of 5. Based upon your experience and remodeling, you say, hey, it's 5. So you take the 5 divided by the life expectancy of 65 gives you 7.6% depreciation. And this is on your cost, or roughly 1.5% per year. So that's how you would do it, is you go look at this house, you say it should last 65, it's my opinion that the effective age is 5. 5 divided by 65 gives you your percentage. And that is the percentage that you will put on, that 7.6%, onto your cost section. So here's, I rounded here. So we've got this cost of construction, land value, physical was, based upon an effective age of 7%. So your depreciation here is roughly $68,000. Now, what I'll tell you is effective age, it's a poor method doing to the subjectivity, doing that appraisers are all going to have different opinions about that one. You could use this, but if you're going to do this, you need to really document what you're doing. You need to document what was remodeled, updated, refreshed, refurbished, all of the new Fannie Mae stuff, what components were not remodeled, what was the condition, what was the difference between the subject and the comparables. In other words, don't just slap it down, guess on it, and move on. You need to calculate this and document what's going on because it's such a sloppy method. And you need to keep this information in your files. Your work file must contain this. It's an absolute must. If you do not have this and you get challenged by Fannie Mae with their AQM system, by your state board, by a lawsuit, and trust me, they are suing appraisers for work done in 2005 right now. You must, absolutely positively must have this information in your file. It is the only way that someone is going to be able to defend you. So keep good tracks. Now, let's jump over to the market method, if you will, sales comparison. Let me give you an inside tip of this. For every single appraisal that you do, I don't care where it is, go find new construction. I know, as close as you can, as best as possible. I know there's not a lot, but search out new construction. Even declining neighborhoods, I've found new construction. This is going to provide you with very critical information that will make your appraisal life easier and make determining adjustments, particularly for wear and tear, easier. New construction will help you measure depreciation, the cost of construction, and land value, all in the same sale. So we have this sale. It was up the street in Seattle area. It was new construction. You're able to look at some photos. So let me show you how this worked. The sales price was $500,000. We looked at its history and we found out that the land was worth $100,000. Right there, we've got something that's important. So the total of the improvements cost, that includes garage and landscaping and sales commissions and profits, everything is $400,000. We subtract the site improvements of about 10 G's. We subtract the garage costs. It gives us the living area, if you will, at $370,000 divided by 2,200 square feet. I now have my cost per foot. That's what I get to use on my subject if it looks something like this, with some cheap granite countertops, some thin wood cabinets, and the like that's there. Now, what this really tells you is on this one new construction, you have your land cost, your land value. It carries right over to your subject. Number two on your hit parade, you have your cost per square foot that you can use in your cost approach. And this is new construction. It can also help you determine what your adjustment will be for depreciation, assuming you're doing an older house, if you will. So by analyzing new construction in a neighborhood, the appraiser has facts that support lot value, construction cost, and the adjustment for depreciation. This is market-derived data. It's not an effective age wild guess, a WYSIWYG. It's what you got. You've got support, proof, and evidence of this. Now, no matter what method you use going forward, and I'll show you a bunch, keep notes, lots of notes. I write every adjustment that we do on our appraisals here. We have on handwritten notes or and some of the others that you can use, note-taking. Location, site, square footage, everything is written. So if somebody questions me on my adjustment and I did not explain it in the appraisal, I jump right back to my notepad, open it up, rip it off, and I go, here, I compared comp 2 and 3, 4 and 5, or single line regression, whatever, I put it in. So determining the adjustment for new construction, for depreciation. It is the difference between a brand new house of similar, it doesn't have to be perfectly equal, but similar new house and your 5-year-old house or whatever it is. So think of it as a matched paired analysis between a new house and a 5-year-old house. You can do it with your subject, hot dog. But if you don't have something just like it, find another new home in the neighborhood and compare it to a 5-year-old sale in the neighborhood. Maybe it's a different style. Yours is a Rambler and this is a 2-story. At least it's something that shows how you came to your adjustment. So let's make the theoretical perfect world we know doesn't exist. A 2-story home, 2,200 square feet, 7 rooms, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, same. I know, it doesn't happen that often, but you can go to a new subdivision in your neighborhood and calculate this. So whether you're in Phoenix and you run over to Surprise and you do it, and you're appraising something in Central Phoenix, at least it's something that shows how you derived your adjustment. It's not perfect, but it's something, and it's better than a WYSIWYG guess on something like this. So let's say you have new construction selling in the subdivision 500, your 5-year-old house in the same subdivision sells for 450, your depreciation is 50 G's, 10%, and even better, about $10,000 per year. Hot dog. So on the cost section, I come in and here's my land value. Here's my $164 a square foot construction derived by that new construction up the street. I have figured out the difference between a new house and an old house, and it says 50. 50,000 is what goes here. It is my depreciation adjustment. And that 50,000 is also what I use over on the sales comparison approach. That's why I find the cost approach so absolutely critical. It's the first thing I do in my appraisals. I always do it. I don't care if it's a 200-year-old house or a brand new one. I do a cost approach. It helps point out things. I would strongly recommend that everyone does it. So remember that $50,000 adjustment between a 5-year-old house of the subject and the brand new one in the same subdivision, the one over there on the right. My adjustment's 50 G's. But, oh, hey, one of my comps is only 3 years old. We already figured out that $50,000 is for 5 years, therefore it's $10,000 per year. You have your age or condition adjustment, depending upon how you want to do it. This is how we do it. We'll do it for age. Sometimes I flip it over and do it the other way. It doesn't matter. As long as you have it in there and there is a methodology and a way for somebody to understand what's going on. Now, market evidence is the best. You have evidence of the adjustment, right or wrong. You have evidence. And right there, that'll stop lawsuits. That'll stop state boards from coming after you. That'll stop all sorts of issues because here is the methodology that I used. Right or wrong. It is repeatable by other review appraisers. It is a recognizable method taught in all of the school books on appraising for us. It has been taught to others, and if somebody questions your adjustment, you can shove that data up to them. And you can say, yo, this is what I used. Right or wrong, this is the recognizable method that I use, so quit arguing with me over that. And I will tell you, when I see this in work files, I turn to whoever and it says, this appraiser's got it handled. Why are you going after them? Stop it. I will recommend that to attorneys and prosecutors, criminal and civil, and say, this guy's got it down. Quit worrying about it. Now, there's a third way for you to figure out depreciation, wear and tear in the cost approach and in the sales comparison approach. It's by letting somebody else do it. Marshall and Swift has a very nice cost calculator online or books. You know, take your pick on how much money you want to spend. They have done a sampling of properties in the U.S. to establish average. They then create tables. I will tell you it's not overly accurate in some areas, San Francisco, Seattle, New York, but it's probably good in Kansas City. It's probably good for a lot of places. It's very good for beginners. I would strongly recommend people new to this business fall back on it just because it is a table and you can, if something's wrong, you can blame it on somebody else. If you have very high appreciation rates, which we now have in Seattle, our prices are back to 2007-8 levels and screaming higher, it wouldn't work here because the costs are simply not keeping up. We have building permit fees of $21,000. Upper-end homes, you can't work it for Bill Gates' house, trust me. You can't use it on a property in Montana built on an island or on 100,000 acres. Just isn't going to work for some of those things. But it is a methodology and a way of using it. And the tables, I'm not going to explain them here, but it can break down major appliances. Are they low quality, average, good, excellent quality? And it tells you how many years they will survive. And you can calculate out things. They explain it within the tables. I'm not going to explain it here, but it is one of the 3 methods for you to determine depreciation. And it works, and I think it's better than using that effective age, even though it kind of relies upon this. At least there's a table you can rely upon to say. Now, one way to figure out whether your depreciation is accurate, the cost approach only has 3 major variables: land, cost per square foot to build, and others, and depreciation. Those are the 3 major things. If you've got your land value nailed down, if you've got your cost per square foot by looking at other new construction in the neighborhood, if there's something that's really putting you vastly different from your sales comparison approach, it could be because you have not allocated your depreciation. So if 2 of them are rock solid, it's the other one that's going to be, and if you're off, stop and look at your work and figure it out. Maybe you need to reconsider how the physical depreciation is different than economic, and we can't even touch that one here. Let's jump down to the sales comparison approach to give you some idea. Think of the sales comparison approach as this big nebulous cloud that's out there. There's high value, low value, unusual, twisted dome homes, underground homes, God knows whatever, that's in there. The point of a market analysis is to reduce the cloud, to try to clear some of the fog out so that you can determine where the subject's value is. And remember, that's what we're trying to do, is find anything that helps us, no matter how remote or populated your city is. Data that helps us determine and leads us to a conclusion is incredibly important. So how to determine and adjust? Well, you have to identify the individual components. It could be, what's the land value? Very, extremely important no matter what. What's your square footage? What's the quality of your house? What's the desirability of your floor plan, functional utility? What's going on in the neighborhood? You know, is Boeing coming or leaving, sort of thing. Rate the components, and we do that now on a 1 to 5 scale. Determine if the market cares. You could have a Q3 and a Q4, and the market doesn't give a damn. So just because there's a difference in quality or condition does not necessarily mean that the market is adjusting for that. And then you determine what that is. So the order of adjustments. It is critical for you to understand that to make an accurate adjustment, there is a certain order that must be followed with this. Again, we go into this more in detail, but you must adjust for the terms. You must adjust your sales price to a cash equivalent. You got to subtract for closing costs, the down payment assistance, a car or whatever was kicked in on those sorts of things. And we will be doing a class explaining that in next month on how appraisers determine adjustments for comparables and concessions. How do you determine that? It's a two-parter because there's so much information. We'll go through it. Very, very important. You then must adjust for time. Was your comparable, did it sell last week or 6 weeks ago? We just finished doing an appraisal where we were using comparables, I'm not kidding you, from 10 years ago, because that's where the market was equal to today. We were able to show it through time, and we had all sorts of charts and graphs, and it was good. But you need to prove for terms, time, type of ownership, location, what part of town are you in. Now you get to the square footage and the bedrooms and the bathrooms and things like that. So understand, terms 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the most important, yet here we are as residential people focusing on usually physical characteristics. You can also see this very same thing if you look at the appraisal form. Notice at the top, sales, concession, or financing, date and time, location, type of ownership. When we're taught and trained as appraising, we often blow through those things and don't pay much attention. It's all this other stuff, design, quality, age, that's kind of minor. But when we start off with, that's usually where we start getting taught. So how do we do the voodoo that we do? Well, there's all sorts of methods. Number one, there's called data analysis, and then there's several subversions of that. Statistical analysis, cost, my special Hager's percentage of use, and then there's capitalization and interviews. So right off the top, you have at least 6 major categories of how to determine an adjustment. A data analysis. You take a large group of data and you make comparisons. I'll show you. Then you can also do a paired sales. It's smaller data, and you can do it. It's a side-by-side comparison, if you will. So let's start with grouped analysis. You can use this to determine the average price for a home with 2 bedrooms versus the average price for a home with 3 bedrooms. Better to use the median price. You can use the median for a 1-car garage versus a 2-car garage. I would not select this data based upon the entire city, all of St. Louis. I would try to stay within your neighborhood, a slice of the market. Maybe it's new construction, maybe it's first-time home buyers, maybe it's the upper-end rich. So I do it as a slice. Let me show you an example. We go into our MLS, and I search an area, and I say, give me all of North Seattle in the $250,000 to $350,000 price range, which is about what the houses were. You could do this based upon size, age, if you want to. You can slice it in a number of ways. I did 2 searches. The number one was, give me all homes that are 3 bedrooms, and it said the average was $326,000. Boom. I then did the same search, and I said, give me 2-bedroom homes. And the funny thing is, they were lower. There was a difference of $23,000. That's the adjustment that I use in my appraisal for bedrooms. I have the statistics right here, grouped analysis that says. We also analyzed this in a number of different ways. We did some matched pairs. We did some other methods that I'll show you. And the funny thing is they almost all came out to about $20,000 for the bedroom. Yes, I did it just for square footage and other things. So we poked around it. This also was showing me that the average days on the market for a two-bedroom house was 64 days versus 53 on another one. Okay, so 3 bedrooms are selling quicker. We then tried, here's a difference between a 3 and 4 bedroom home in the 6 to 800. This is on an island called Mercer Island just outside of Seattle. And we did the same thing. What's the median price for the 3s and the 4s? And in this particular case, the market said that 4th bedroom is only worth about $7,500. And that's kind of normal. We see the difference between a 2-bedroom to a 3 being a larger number, like 23,000. And we see the difference between a 3 and a 4 to be a smaller number, 7,500, and between a 4 and a 5, sometimes we don't see any difference whatsoever. And so our adjustments on our appraisal can be just that, and we explain it. Between 2 and 3, it's 20,000. Between 3 and 4, it's 7,500. Between 4 and 5, there's no adjustment. We explain it in the body of our report. Does it make the phone ring occasionally? Oh, yeah, unfortunately. But that is market support. I can prove it, and when reviewers call us on it, I go, here's my data, Sparky. What do you got? And usually that stops this. This grouping of data, you can do it between one neighborhood and another neighborhood. You can do it between waterfront homes and non-waterfront homes. You can do a census tracts. The U.S. government spends a lot of money determining census tracts, and that is great for location adjustments. We had to use the very first condominium to be built in a city, and the city's 30 miles outside of the major metropolitan. The very first. I had no comps. There is nothing. So we had to make adjustments between the metropolitan and the distant area. And we used these census tracts to indicate that in census tract A in town, it was $30,000 higher than this other, and that became our location adjustment. Was it perfect? Oh, no. What else do I have? Because there is no match paired analysis. So let's move this down to a smaller data set. A small data set, 2 houses, let's say. Let's compare 2 properties that are identical except for a single point. A home with a 2-car garage versus a 1-car. You could use it as a home with a view versus no view. Whatever the difference is in sales price, I'm assuming everything else is perfect, is that matched paired difference. I know you're looking for perfection. I understand it's difficult. There are ways of adjusting for minor differences, and we use them all the time. So think of it this way. You have a sales price of one house with 3 bedrooms, and it's $400, and the 3-bedroom, and the 4-bedroom house is $420. The difference right there, assuming everything else is equal, is 20 G's. So your market analysis based upon a paired sales analysis is 20. That is exactly what we write into our notes. That is the adjustment that goes into the appraisal. And this is based upon reality in that North Seattle area I was telling you about. We did the average or the median of a 3-bedroom, the average of a 2-bedroom. We did all of that, and then we also did a matched paired analysis, and the figures ended up being almost the same. It was kind of frightening. And so we've included both. If you're going to deal with me in a lawsuit, I'm going to use every methodology to support and prove my adjustments to come. Now, we can't afford to do that for standard everyday appraising. You pick one, whatever one works, and that's what you go with it. Let me give you an example of a view adjustment. What's your view worth? Often people ask, what is that view versus a non-view? Maybe you're in the same neighborhood, you got the perfect house, but it doesn't have a view. So property lower, now in this particular one, if you look in your right-hand corner, you see those trees that were there? Those trees were growing up on another guy's backyard, and they were blocking this uphill property owner's view of San Francisco. He didn't like that, the fact that it was blocking. So by the way, he bought the house down below for $15 million just so he could cut down those trees. So for him, the view was kind of important. For the rest of us normal humans, it might not have been worth $15 million. But understand that view is different in different segments, in different price ranges, in different areas. And so just making some flat-out view adjustment is not a good thing. So the simple way of doing this is looking at vacant land. You have eliminated all of the adjustments and considerations for square footage of the house, for quality and things like that. You've really narrowed it down. So look for vacant land with view. Look for something nearby without a view. And the difference is your view adjustment. I was fortunate enough to have one here in Mercer Island, and in their view is kind of a partial one, but it was just that. We were able to prove that this partial view was worth $100,000 within the same subdivision. Sometimes we have gone back in time to maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, 20 years ago when they first built the house. What was the difference between the view lot in the subdivision and the non-view lot in the subdivision? Maybe it was 20%. Now you can bring that 20% forward and determine what the value of the view is today. And there's some other ways of breaking down a view adjustment on a per degree of view. Again, we don't have time to go over it here. We do it in the long class. And you use a protractor in figuring it out, and we're able to calculate that each degree of view could be worth $1,000. And that's how we say subject has a 90-degree view, comp number 1 has a 50-degree view. The adjustment is based upon bird degrees of view from the main living area. So it is a great way to use something like that. It's not perfect everywhere, but many times. So use it for view, waterfront, bedrooms and bathrooms. Let me show you how concessions can alter a sales price. Sale number 1 was listed for $100, no concessions, and it sold for $100. Woohoo, sweet. Sale number 2 was listed for $100. It had $2,000 in buyer's closing costs, and it sold for $100. Well, apparently the concessions didn't have any impact on it. The matched pair between 1 and 2 indicates that. But look at sale 3. It was listed for $100. It was boosted by $50,000 in kickbacks, down payment assistance, and closing costs, and it sells for $150. There is your first warning that there's an issue here. So the adjustment right here says that $50,000 is the concession adjustment. You can compare sale 1 to 3. You have another matched pair of sale 2 to 3. Notice you've got 2 matched pairs right there. And that's what we often say. Sale number 1, sale number 3, sale 2 and 3 indicates here's what the adjustment is. Thank you very much. Moving on down. It's not that difficult. You just need to analyze and look at the data. Now, this one's going to get a little bit more interesting, so we'll focus up here. Let's say your sale was for a square foot lot. So I'm just looking, it could be improvements, for the house here. Let's say your first sale, 100,000, 2,000 square feet, indicates roughly $50 per foot. I'm just keeping it simple here. I'm not subtracting or anything, land. Look at sale number 2. It sold for $112,500. It's 500 feet bigger. It sold for $12,000. That's indicating $45 per square foot, but that's not your adjustment. Look at sale number 2, $125,000, 3,000 square foot. Difference is 25 or 41 bucks a foot. Here's a problem that I see. Many appraisers would simply put in their adjustment for size at $41 or $45. That would be absolutely incorrect. It's actually $25. I know. Now let me show you on the next slide. And you do have this out in your printout, this next slide. Understand that adjustments are not linear and smooth. They're not based upon the total size of the improvements. And I'll come back and show you. Just because something gets larger, it does get higher. But understand the first 50 front feet of waterfront, or the first 90 degrees of view, the first bathroom, bedroom, the first garage are the most valuable. The next bathroom has a little less value. The 5th or 6th bathroom has even less value. And it's the same thing on square footage of a house, of a lot, of front footage on the lake or whatever. So here's an assumption for you to work through. This does take a little bit of getting in your head, and I get it, but work through it. Assume $100,000 sales price, 20,000 square foot site equals $5 per square foot. The adjustment that you're going to run into is not between a 10,000 and a 15,000 foot. It's not $5 a foot. I know, this is bizarre. Assume your zoning is R5000, 5,000 square foot. Anything less than a 5,000 foot lot, you can't build upon it. A 3,000 square foot lot, who gives a darn? You can't build upon it. Put a tent on it. But once you hit your 5,000, your site value soars. It goes from, $10,000 to $100,000 buildable. But just because you got 5,001 feet doesn't necessarily increase it. So the first chunk of value in any lot is the chunk that makes it buildable. So what is the minimum necessary to make your site buildable? What's your zoning? What's your site size? That site becomes buildable. That's the most valuable. Just because you add on some extra doesn't mean it's $40 a square foot for the next square foot, for the incremental foot. So one way to look at this on a chart here is if you're less than a building site, you can't build unless you got 5,000 feet, it could be worth $3 a foot. But the moment you make it buildable, you hit that 5,000 square foot mark, boom, your value leaps to $40 a square foot in my example. But once you hit a 7,000 or 8,000 square foot site, the value for that incremental, for that next square foot, is probably only worth about $6. It's what makes it buildable is the most valuable. So in this example, you can work this through, and I trust you probably will tonight and be kicking it around with scratch paper. If these are your sales, 100,000, 112, 125, what's the adjustment between the subject, let's say it's comp number 1, what's the adjustment between that and your comps? That's what you need to work. So here's the math. I'll let you work it out later. But between sale 1 and sale 2, the site grew by 500 square feet. The price grew by $12,500. So it's the incremental increase in price divided by the increase in size gives you $25 a foot. $25,000, but it's 1,000 feet. Geez, $25 a foot. So your square foot adjustment is not that $41 or $45 or $50. That's wrong. It's $25. What is the value of the incremental increase of value? Again, I'm tossing these things out for you a whole lot faster than you need, but it's a good way. So matched pairs are great for comparing one property. It's a method, not the only one. It's not perfect. It can be influenced by the appraiser, but I'll tell you, it's better than guessing. It's better than you just saying, based upon my 30 years in the business, or what some sheet said. It's a standardized method. It's taught in appraisal classes. It's repeatable, and you can use it to defend yourself, which is kind of, and by the way, your appraisals become a whole lot more accurate. Hey, let's go look at an allocation method. It's an easy way. You can allocate value to individual components. The best way is kind of lumping it together. You can say X% towards the land, X% towards the improvements, the house or the building that's on it. It's not great at determining adjustments for the improvements, but it's got some reason to it. In my county, we have the King County assessors, and they give you all sorts of information. And within here, our assessor, as in almost most disclosure states, they allocate a appraised land value is 80%. The improvements are valued at 20% in the total. You're not caring what the appraised value is. You're looking for that percentage. That's what you're trying to break down. And it's saying that your land here is worth 80%. The house is almost nothing. Sounds like an old house to me is what it amounts to. Here's how we put this on a little quick table for us to figure this out. The subject sold for $200. The tax assessor said the improvements were worth 40%. The land was worth 60. So if I have a sales price of $200, the allocation says my land is worth $120,000. Hot dog. Now again, I'm just using the percentages, not what the county assessor says the property is worth, because I don't know that they really are. So how can this help you determine an adjustment? You do the same allocation for your subject in your comp number 1 and 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, and notice these wild sales prices, 200, 250, 190. The allocation tells me what my land value is, and any differences in land value are my adjustment. So you can use this for 20 comparables, and you can say, based upon the allocation method, based upon county records, it indicates that my land is worth X, and my comparables is worth X times 5, or whatever it is. You are using this to determine the difference in land value. You can also reverse that and determine it for what are your improvements worth. And if you're starting to value your improvements high, maybe this is saying there's something wrong. So it's an allocation. It's a way to go through it. That's why I let you have the slides on this one so you can look at that. It's a cool way to touch upon something like this. Now, let's get into a grouped analysis with more math. Okay? It's a little more complex, but if it's done right, it's kind of cool, and I'll show you we use it a lot here. Statistical analysis can be a thing called single line or linear regression or multiple regression. I would be ecstatic if every appraiser out there today, and by the way, we have a lot of appraisers all across the United States and North America here today. It is a huge group listening to this. And I find that my classes on adjustments are some of the best attended because of this. So let's go to this regression analysis. It's a mathematical graphing, jumping back to junior high and high school and algebra and trig. You can display a slope or a value per incremental change, per square foot of a site, waterfront, bedrooms, bathrooms. You can use all sorts of things if you just get this single line regression down a little bit. And again, I'd be ecstatic if you can just try it. The simplest case is a single line regression. It is contains two variables. There's an independent variable and there's a dependent. Who cares? It's not really a big deal. One predicts a change in the other. So the way to look at this is as the size of the house or lot gets bigger, theoretically, its value usually increases. By graphing, we can determine this slope or incremental change. This is a cool way to determine the total value of something and the adjustments. Two things can be used here. So for instance, just looking at this chart, if you had a 1,500-foot house, you go straight up and you make a left-hand turn, and it tells me that your house is worth roughly $120,000. That's for the improvements, not the land, not the land. I'm just looking at the improvements, so you subtract. So you can use this to check your value. If you're coming in at $200,000 for your house, and this is telling me it should be worth $120,000, it's like, what's happening? You must have a lot of quality and condition adjustments. So what we do is, and I'll show you this, I'll show you step by step, just coming up in a second, on how we do this in an Excel. We take these sales, we plot out the size and their sales price. And our data here, even though there's only 4 points, we would rather have more, we indicate that our square footage adjustment is $60.34 per square foot. So once you start at roughly, a 700 square foot house, as we move up to a 2,500 square foot house, the adjustment is $60 a square foot. And this thing up there, if you see R squared equals 0.98, the closer you are to 1, the better your accuracy. 0.98, you can't argue with me on that one. This is telling me there's no other adjustment for quality, condition, age. This is flat out saying that this particular market is adjusting for square footage. And that's what we put in. And we indicate, here's how I got my adjustment, single line regression. We even copy and paste that. So now let me walk you through an Excel on this one. And again, you can come back later. You can play with it. Excel has some other programs that will help you, but it's kind of cool. So what we do is determine the value of the attributed to the improvements. So number one, I'm doing this for determining the house square footage adjustment. We take the sales price of a comparable, we subtract the land value. Remember, you went in new construction in your neighborhood and determine land value. Subtract the land value equals the total improvement value. I'm simplifying this and saying it's just on the square footage of the house. So sales price minus land improvements. Chart these to help you. So here's what we do. Excel, I go size of the improvements, value of the improvements. It's already subtracting land value. And here's what we have in my neck of the woods. We put this onto an Excel spreadsheet. Fairly simple, fairly easy. We then create a scatter chart. I'm waiting for all of the slides to catch up on everybody. We create a scatter chart that's out there. And I create one, you'll experiment with it, you'll play with it. Then I right-click on the data points. See, this little value of improvements chart pops up in Excel. We right-click on a data point, any one of them, and I say add a trend line. Once you say add a trend line, another box will pop up. And the simplest way for you to do it is to check linear. It'll give you a straight line. And then go down to the bottom and say display equation and display R squared on the chart. You want both. Click and have both of them on your chart. Once you hit close, your little graph will pop up and it'll show you a really cool thing. It will say that the value of your house, your improvements, are increasing, why, moving up at roughly $110 per square foot. The $110 per square foot is the adjustment that we put into our appraisal. Or another way of saying it is starting at $140,000 for each additional square foot of house, the value is increasing at $110. That is what goes into our appraisals. So scatter chart, right-click on the data, give me a linear, give me an R squared and this, and we copy that chart and we put it right into our addendum on our appraisals. And we say, how did we determine the square footage? In this particular case that you're seeing here, this was 146. That had been a condominium. We had all of these data points. We put it on in all of the sales price. Didn't have to subtract land value. That was pretty quick and easy. And our condo says that we are adjusting at $146 per square foot. Boom. We are done. I will absolutely tell you, when we put this in, we stopped getting stupid phone calls from AMCs and banks saying, how did you come up with your adjustment? And it was, Sparky, read my report. It is already in there. So we will do it for square footage of site. We will do it for square footage of house. We can even calculate it out for bedrooms and bathrooms and all sorts of things if you want to. It's just one technique out of dozens, but it is a very powerful technique that if you put in there and something happens and you give me or Bob Keith a phone call and you need defense, if you got this in your appraisal reports, we can defend you like you won't believe. It just makes, and by the way, Fannie Mae won't blacklist you if you have something like this. So let me show you a different use of it. This was, again, in our neck of the woods. We plotted out every single land sale that took place for 2 years, and it also included houses that were going to be demoed. We plotted them all out. Site sizes on the bottom, sales prices on the left. We clicked on it, and what this told us was that the square footage of a lot was worth $21 per square foot. So starting at $680,000, that was the cheapest lot in my neck of the woods. Oy. And going on up from there, the square footage was increasing at $21.77, if you will. Now, what we did was the same thing in Excel. I took site size on one column. I took sales prices on another. We highlighted them. We clicked on Excel and told it. It gave us this graph. This was used in court. The judge was impressed. Our side, if that happens, won the case, and it was worth millions of dollars of damages because we were able to prove it. The appraiser on the other side said, well, based upon my 20 years in the business, and he was thinking that his opinion actually cared. and the court ripped him apart on the stand for 2 hours. It was embarrassing. I was feeling sorry. But if it'll stand up in court, folks, it's going to stand up to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, everybody else. If you want more on multi-line regression, I am not going to play with that here. You can do sales price, bedrooms, locations. There's a whole class by the Appraisal Institute. You can do it. There's also some documents that you can read. You can just go search. So if you're an Appraisal Institute member, there's a class. NAIFA has a class. It's much more advanced, and it's kind of cool on some of these things. So it's another way to do it. So in your cost approach, you have the depreciated value of a component. That's one way to determine adjustment. There is the cost of cure, which most of us have used for years. It's not that good. And then there's the cost to cure plus the market's response. So these are 3 new methods for determining an adjustment by using the cost approach. A depreciated value. So let's assume that you have an extra room in your house over your neighbor, 144 square feet. Well, remember you said in your cost approach, so I'm determining this for a subject, you have an extra couple 144 square feet. You said in your cost approach it cost $175 per square foot to build it if new. That means your extra square footage is worth $25,000. But the problem here is your house is not new. It isn't new. It's older. So you can't have a bedroom adjustment or a square footage adjustment at $25,000. It must be something less because you have to subtract for depreciation, wear and tear. So we already went into the cost approach. We already said that there was a 15% loss of value during wear and tear in the cost approach. I'm bringing this over into the sales comparison. So we do the 175 times 144 gives me 25. We subtract 15%, or about $3,700, gives me an adjustment for $21,420. That is the value of the bedroom that I use in the market grid. It was also the same, close to the same adjustment that we came up with in a matched paired analysis. And it was almost, I was $23,000 in a grouped analysis. So a depreciated value, if you get your depreciation right, can be a reasonable method for determining this. So here's what it's going to look like on your form. Your $175 per square foot, you already figured out what your depreciation was on this house that you're appraising at 15%. The difference in square footage, the math is sitting there right there, and that is that $21,000 is what I put into my grid for for the bedroom. The bedroom size, not square footage, for the bedroom size. There's a way of doing it for square footage too. So you figure out the cost, figure out the depreciation, the depreciated value of that component, whether it's a garage, a swimming pool, an extra bedroom, whatever it is, an ADU unit, that's how you use it. It's kind of cool. It works, and if you can get the depreciation right, you're in pretty good shape. Let's move over to the cost to cure. Cost to cure is nice, and I will tell you that way too many appraisers use it, including MAIs. It's almost an embarrassment. The cost to cure is nice, but as far as I'm concerned, it's worthless. It indicates the bottom end of a potential adjustment. It does not take into account what the market is adjusting for it. It may work for new construction, but if you've got an older house or something like that, it just isn't going to work. The reason is cost does not equal value. My example is a swimming pool. In the Pacific Northwest, you spend $40,000 for a swimming pool. Who cares? Just because you spent 40 G's doesn't mean it gave you $40,000 of value. It gave you something less, maybe nothing. So there's my example of cost does not necessarily mean value. And appraisers fall back on this, and when they do, they underestimate the value, and I will pick on appraisers mercilessly when we're doing reviews or training anything because it's just sloppy. So let me show you a better way. It is called the cost to cure plus the market's response. Clearly, a total market adjustment is comprised of several things, and I'll show this. It is the market's response to fixing it. So you have the cost of a repair. Let's say you have to put on a new roof, if that's what it is. But you can't live in the house, and so it's a big house, and it's going to take you a month to fix it. So what are your holding expenses while you're not living in it? Where are you living while they're putting on this brand new roof or siding or whatever? And how much money could you have made by leaving your money in the bank? And then what is the market's response to paying that out? See, not everybody wants to go buy a fixer-upper because banks won't allow them to. They have to think of where they're going to live. There's a lot of impact beyond simply a cost. So to give you kind of a sheet of this one, let's assume the cost of repair was something was $50,000. Figure out what that comes from. Marshall and Swift Repair Guide, talk to a builder. Don't guess. Really figure it out, because if you guess, it's an embarrassment. Figure it out somehow. Blame it on somebody else is what I'm saying. Now, what is the cost of owning that house while they're making that repair? Maybe what are your mortgage payments, your taxes, insurance, utilities? How many months is it going to take to make the repair? We have a house here where the landslide in the hillside slid away. The backyard was gone. Nobody could live in it because it was a danger. So they had to pack up and move out of the house. They had to come in and put in a small retaining wall to lock it into place and to fill it all up. And then so, and, you know, at the time it was $50,000. But then they had to live somewhere else or pay for their expenses, so that was $3,000. And then they had to live somewhere else during this time, so that was another couple of bucks that goes into it. And by the way, if you had to pay out about $58,000, how much interest could you have earned in the bank? That has to be added. Okay, now you've got the true cost to cure. But what about the market? Not everyone wants to buy a problem house. What is the adjustment? So you have to go out and determine what that adjustment is for the yucky factor. And that one thing, the yuck factor as I show here, when we do our appraisals, we charge $3,500 to determine that adjustment. Understand this is not easy to determine it, but maybe you have a matched paired analysis. Maybe you have a matched pair, one with a retaining wall and one without. Maybe. I doubt it, but you hope for it. So what I'm saying is you can't simply use this cost to cure because it's terrible. You need to use a depreciated cost. You could use a cost to cure plus the market's response. And that is the one that I would recommend. So if you use a cost approach to help you determine the adjustment, you can use a depreciated cost to cure, or cost to cure plus the market's response. The depreciated is kind of weak, but it's okay. Cost to cure is really weak. Unless it's for new construction, I wouldn't. Cost to cure plus market's response is the way to do it. It is more time consuming, but I'll also tell you that it will stand up in court. Now, let's jump over to a different version of this one. This is my favorite. This is Hager's percentage of use calculations. One way to look at it is determine the cost new for a component. How many people in the neighborhood or your area, your market area, whatever you want to say, have that component? And then apply a percentage. Those are the 3 steps. Let me show you an example. Let's say everybody in the neighborhood has a kitchen in their house. Well, a kitchen costs $20. I know I'm underestimating. Let's say a kitchen costs $20, but everybody has it. So if it costs $20,000, then the market values that at $20,000 because everybody's got one. But what about a swimming pool? And here's how we do it. We look at aerial photos. You can Google Earth or whatever. You can look down and you can see how many swimming pools are in your neighborhood. If a pool costs 40 G's and 5% of your neighbors have it, then the market value is 5%. If you have a 3-car garage, 20% of your neighbors have a 3-car garage, then the value is 5%. So it's a percentage of the people that have it. So it's you can put my name on it if you want. Hager's percentage of use calculations. It is a new methodology. The accuracy is still under review. We run it on a variety of things, particularly swimming pools, 3, 4, 5-car garages, outbuildings, barns, and the like, and we use it. I will tell you that for the majority of times that we have implemented, it's worked out. It's almost scary. I would use it in addition, so I'd use it as a second check. Start playing with it in your neighborhood. You may find out that it's really kind of a cool method and it works for you. All right, let's jump over to capitalizing the rent income off of this one. We're getting down towards the end of it. We only have about 10 more minutes, so let's show you this one. I'm only going to focus on a GRM, gross rent multiplier. We're not going to be able to touch the cap rates or the others. So there is a direct correlation between an improvement, a component, stuff, and rent income. Greater your improvements, bigger the house, more bedrooms, greater the income. So by measuring the income, you can measure value. You can determine an adjustment. One of the best ways of doing this, is cool ways, is a GRM. It's a relationship between. It's usually a 2 or a 3-digit number. The math formulas here, it's in all appraisal books, so I'm not showing you anything dramatic, but this ought to make your life easy. So value divided by income equals a GRM. And then you can play with it. So let's assume you have a sales price of $100,000. It's renting for $1,000 a month. You have a GRM of 100. Sweet. Let's reverse that. Let's say you have something that's renting for $1,000 a month. You, by looking at other sales in the neighborhood, determine that the GRM is 100. It tells you what the value is at 100,000. All right. You can use the GRM and that formula to determine a market adjustment. The difference between a 2 and a 3-car garage, fireplaces, bedrooms, square footage, anything. It's kind of cool. So let me give you 2 examples here. For instance, this one right here, we were thinking of buying a rental property, and right off the top we were trying to compare and see which one would have been better for us to buy as a rental. By the way, the one at the top, it had a lower GRM. So we go into a neighborhood, you can poke at some houses that look like your subject, and you determine that this brand new home in your town, one down the block would rent for, and you'd have a GRM of 176. So you look at other sales in the neighborhood. You determine what the GRM would be appropriate for the subject, as similar as possible. So here's what you can do. Let's say there's a house with a 2-car garage, and it rents for $1,550. Craigslist, go to Craigslist, it'll tell you your local MLSs might also have rental data. Let's say a house with a 1-car garage will only rent for $1,500. So you have $50 difference in the rental. So $50 times the GRM for houses similar to yours or the area, the more precise you can get, the better. You determine that the GRM is 200. So what that is telling me is if $50 is the difference in monthly rent, the income or the adjustment on your appraisal is $10,000 for the difference between a 1-car garage and a 2-car garage. So determine the rents, determine the GRM. I know it's a little more difficult, but you can do this even in areas where there is farm country where there's very few houses, and they will rent barns and rent garages and have it. Let's say you've got a house with 2,144 square feet versus 2,000 square feet. There is a difference in rent of $36. You determine the GRM for the area or the house, and that $36 translates into $7,200 of an adjustment for 144 square feet. Boom! By the way, that was about what the depreciated value came out to. It was kind of freaky. So an income approach is a solid method of supporting your adjustments. It works really great in areas where there's rentals, without a doubt. It's not going to work in some, I get it, but that's why I'm saying it's a method to help you. It's repeatable, it's a standardized method, and it's taught in appraisal classes. Even if it's wrong, you can say, this is what I did, here's how I utilized it. And nobody can poke at you and say, you're an idiot. What you can say is I have support for mine. What do you got? Now, here's one other one. It could be an interview. I will tell you it's the last gasp of desperation, but it's better than nothing. Yeah, I will tell you that the commercial people do this a lot, particularly when it comes down to something that has retail, a car lot or something like that. How much would you pay for this? Personal interviews can reveal opinions about them. It's considered a secondary indicator. It should only be used to help confirm something or as a very last resort because it's so weak. It's relying upon opinions, and it's tough to repeat it. If you're going to use an interview, you'd better make sure of the question you ask, who you talk to, who, what, when, where, how, and why. You need to know this to keep track of it. Again, it's not perfect, but it can be used. And so you go up and you ask, who could be these market participants? We talk to real estate agents. When we are here, Graham, one of the appraisers here, he says, I talked to this agent this time and I asked him all about this really quirky neighborhood. We talked to him about these dome homes, whatever it is, who, what, when, where, how, why, and you can talk to an agent. Better if you could talk to a buyer or a seller, but we only have the agent's phone number. Property owners who may be buying that. If you are dealing with a lot of investment properties and they want to steal things for 20 cents on the dollar, it's pretty cool. You can even talk to it. So when you were thinking of buying a property, did you consider price per square foot? Yes or no? Did you consider bedroom or bathroom? Or it could be, we didn't give a damn because, it's just a great smoking price. So those are some of the ways. Again, interviews are possible. It's just not perfect. So let's kind of give you a summary of this information as we start to wind this down. You can do a data analysis. You can do a statistical analysis. You can do the cost, depreciated cost, cost plus market response, Hager's percentage of use. Try it. Tell me how that's working for you. Next couple of bizarre adjustments or things like that you're going to do, give it a shot. Tell me what your reports are. I'd love to know more about all across the United States since we have literally hundreds online from all across. You could use the capitalization, the GRM or the cap rate, or personal interviews, any one of those. But understand, adjustments in your appraisal report, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are hunting you if you don't have this. They must be based upon market data, not your opinion or some sheet that you were given. The appraisers must have support. It must be in your appraisal or your work file, or you reference it. It's in the box over there in the corner. A reviewer must be able to recreate your adjustments and conclusions. If you have no support, then no adjustment in the appraisal. Don't do it. Adjustments without support ends up, if you get challenged, hopefully you won't, but in any way, shape, or form you get touched and you're not going to have it, you're going to be in deep trouble and likely lose. So your opinion doesn't count. What does the market say that adjustment is? That's what is difficult in our appraisal, and by the way, that's why it takes years. You have to have college degrees now to get into our profession, and it's because you need to know these things, if you will. Now, if you need more information, Isaac, David, we're getting to the end here. If you need more information, we do have 4- and 7-hour live versions of these, a whole lot more information. Bring a computer, we work through it. It's CE approved in numerous states. If you want to have a class in your neighborhood, contact us. More than happy to do this. Now, what I'll also tell you is next Tuesday, we're going to do part 2 of this. We're going to talk about the C's and Q's. So mind your C's and Q's here, trying to keep you off it. If you have consistent quality and condition ratings, that is a saving grace for you. It's extremely important. So people bouncing their Q's and C's around is what really gets them in trouble. So we're going to have some real-world examples, and we're going to go over this. So upcoming education here. We are going to do Q and C ratings next Tuesday. It'll be about 90 minutes for that, maybe a little less. We are then going to go how to adjust for concessions, market value, and how to determine adjustments for concessions, closing costs, down payment assistance, cars, things like that. We're going to go through that. It's going to be a 2-parter, 90 minutes per shot on something like that on September 9th and September 16th. If you need more information on that, go to workingre.com webinars, workingre.com webinars, or you go to their homepage and you'll just click on resources, go to educational webinars, and then you'll see a list of what's up there. Isaac keeps it as current as he possibly can, so you can go look at that. That's there. I will be doing a live 4-hour class in October 14th in Phoenix for COA. We'll be doing it October 17th in Tucson for RISA. So if you're from Arizona, hey, come on over, contact us. We can put you in touch with everybody that's necessary for this, and you can go see what's that. So that's our next live. If you have any questions here needed from me, this is where you reach out to. Here's the information. So, David, Isaac, you got any other closing information we need to talk about?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Richard, very, very much, everybody. Thank you. I want to remind you of a couple things, and then I picked 3 quick questions. There's a lot of questions. If you have a burning question that we did not get to, go ahead and, because many of the questions here I feel were answered in later slides and so forth. So if there is a burning question, just email it in to us at isaac@orep.org, and we'll see that Richard gets it, and we'll try to get it into a future story at Working RE. Isaac's email is isaac. Quick reminder, next Tuesday is the second part of this webinar. Please don't forget. You get reminder emails, but they don't always make it to your inbox. If you did not purchase the second part of it, you may want to consider that. This was recorded, so you will get an automatic link within 48 hours of the recording, so you can let it sink in, listen to it again. And also there was a handout. So if you didn't get the handout, we had a bit of a snafu in the beginning. If you did not get the handout, please email us at isaac@orep.org, and we will send that along. A couple reflections from me very quickly. I know Richard teaches very lengthy classes on these topics, and I know that not everything was covered, but at least I hope maybe you learned, you kind of know what you don't know. A few things. That's sometimes as important as learning something is learning what you don't know. And the other thing is how much what you guys do, how valuable it is. And if you're undercutting your fees and your prices, it's amazing the intricacies and how complex your product is. So that's my observation from this. I have 3 quick questions that I'd like to get to. And Richard, this one is, how is Fannie going to view GLA adjustments that are so much higher, they actually would push ASP higher, and by association market value?
Well, bottom line, if there is an extreme adjustment, like you saw in one of my slides, we're making $146 a square foot on a $300,000 condo. If there's something high, we put in our comments. Here's our proof of what the adjustment is. Whether it pushes value high or low, it's an irrelevancy. The fact is do you have support, proof, evidence of what that is? We put it into the appraisal or we describe it. And if it's there, in other words, they got to kind of live with it. If somebody else down the street isn't doing the right adjustment, $50 a foot or something, they're the ones that are going to be questioned. Because Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and all of these new computer algorithms, they have the ability to start determining adjustments based upon the information in the appraisals. So if they're using computer algorithms, use Excel. It's the least you can do.
Okay, this one's a little lengthy, so please hang in there with us. How do you apply paired sales when you have more than one adjustment to make, like 4, 5, or more? You have many comps, but the prices and amenities oppose each other. What then? I think we all learn. Okay.
Well, what I try to do in something like that is I try to find sales. Let's say you have 6 or 7 sales that you're going to be using as comps. Compare sale 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. Look at those to see if you can find homes that are extremely similar within that data set. And maybe you can get it down to between comp 1 and comp 6, there's only 2 things, square footage and bedroom count. I would use that as a matched pair. If not, then maybe you go away from your comparables and you look for other matched pairs in the neighborhood of similar houses. Maybe it's an older sale. Maybe it's 2 pending, something. So we'd love to use the comps that are there. Hallelujah, if we can. If we can't, we try to think of other ways of applying the paired sales analysis. And then there's a third thing is you go in and you adjust for certain things like square footage. You get rid of the big adjustments so that the only thing left is maybe a location adjustment. And we've had to do that before finding E&O. We adjust for bedroom count, square footage, because we could prove those. And after adjusting the comparables, there was still a difference. and the difference was the obsolescence of being on a major street. So we adjust for the minor stuff. Whatever remains afterwards could be your adjustment for that single component.
All right, and this is the second part of that, and I think you just answered. He says, unfortunately, I've yet to hear anyone teach how to do the multitude of adjustments we see every day, and I think that's what you just answered, is how to do that.
Correct. That's one way of doing it. A multi-line regression analysis is another way. Hey, I'd be happy if everybody got the single-line regression down first. Once you get that down, then you start going, ooh, let me try a multi-line. And that works in subdivisions in Florida and Arizona. It doesn't necessarily work in Minnesota. But you try multi-line regression or paired sales analysis and adjust for what you know, and leave the final adjustment. If there's still a difference, that's probably for your E&O or view or something. So there's a methodology. We just can't cover it here, but take the live class. It's what we do go over there.
Okay, last question is kind of a simple one. Do you find it acceptable to round adjustments, i.e. 21,460 rounded to 21,000?
Yes, absolutely. Trying to get it down to the last dollar, it's implying a degree of accuracy that we simply don't have as appraisers. And so, yes, we do around, at least to the $500, if not the $1,000 mark. And when you get to bigger houses, we around to the nearest, sometimes nearest 100,000. But that's extreme. So, yes, round.
Okay. All right, everybody. I thank you very much for attending. We will see you all 1 week from today for the second part of this webinar. Richard, I'm clapping silently for you. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye.